Good day, and the General is back. I know I've been dormant for quite some time, but it's time for a comeback. Now I could go through the whole window dressing of me like fighting the great space god Korn with a Native American spear, but instead I'm going to dispense with all that and just get on with it. I'm not going to waste your time with, jumping through the air. Oh, die, Korn!
Keep on that ladder!
Right. Today we're going to be taking a look at a game that marks the return of another long-dormant franchise. That game in question is Rise of the Triad. Now for those who have never heard of Rise of the Triad or never saw the classic video, go see it now. Go on, go, shoot, go watch it already. You're not leaving. You're gonna make me talk about the bloody thing, aren't you? Well fine, here's a brief summary. Rise of the Triad was a first-person shooter released in the early 90s, and it was a fairly groundbreaking game at that. One had the rudimentary ability to look up and down, and there was even a flight power-up. The game also had a rudimentary ability to jump as well. It was in the guise of jump pads that it allowed you to actually jump up to higher platforms, which is something that not even Doom allowed you to do. The game was also very quirky, with numerous power-ups that were rather different, to say the least, like the Excalibat, which is a lightsaber-like bat, and a God mode power-up that literally turns you into God himself. Unfortunately, Rise of the Triad kind of got lost in the shuffle, mainly because it was released around the same time as the FPS king, Doom, and was consigned to obscurity. Until now. But before we get into Rise of the Triad, I want to first cover video game remakes for a moment. Video game remakes, or reimaginings, or sequels to very old games can at times be very, very bad. Especially if the people working on them either don't care, don't have any money, or just don't have any time. Case in point, Duke Nukem Forever. Really, when you modernize a classic game, you really actually cheapen it for all concerned. You take a franchise that has had feature-rich games that actually allowed you to play them, and just turn them into a cookie-cutter carbon copy of everything that already exists, just with a few new skins thrown in. Now, in my experience, games like AVP3 and Duke Nukem Forever are the exception rather than the rule. A video game remake should hold true to the classic game. It should either keep with the tone, or it should just, in my opinion, update the graphics. The first real video game remake to pique my interest was Halo Anniversary. It was a perfect video game remake for all concerned. Except for crappy keys. My god, that's not what he's supposed to look like. He looks like his face is some sort of wax mask. Anyway, 343 got it right. They made Halo look contemporary, added online co-op, and left everything else intact, and let us go on an exemplary ride yet again. And now we come to Rise of the Triad. Now this is a modern day update to the original, and it finally provides us the FPS ride that many, including myself, have been waiting for a long bloody time. FPSs used to be my favorite genre, but then it started getting bogged down in all kinds of extraneous crap. It had to be realistic. It had to be easy to get into. In other words, bloody boring. Rise of the Triad is none of those things. In Rise of the Triad, you run like you've really got power armor on, not like you've got cement bags strapped to your legs and thus making you waddle around like an idiot. Gameplay is exactly like that of a 90s shooter. You move fast, and the game is keyboard smashingly hard. The enemies in this game are actually a legitimate threat. Their attacks do real damage, and they can shoot from very far distances and accurately too. There is no regenerating health here, ladies and gentlemen. Oh no! You have one health bar, and maybe some armor. And that's it. You also didn't get health power-ups every 6 feet either. Rather, they're very scarce. Now, in Rise of the Triad, you have the exact same power-ups as in the original Rise of the Triad. Essentially, they're food, and if you heat that power-up, it will actually give you more health. So if you don't heat up a power-up, you're going to get next to no health back. In the game, you get 3 main weapons: a pistol, dual-wielded pistols, and finally a submachine gun. And like the classic game, weapons all have infinite ammo, and you never have to reload them. However, you can reload them if you wish. All you really get from this, though, is shot, as it takes a bit of time to reload the weapons, thus leaving you open to attack. This was most likely implemented as a joke by the devs, since all of us are used to reloading, and we instinctually do it. It's sad to say how modern games have really quite trained us. It's almost as sad as when a product doesn't scan for a cashier and you jokingly say, "Hey, I guess it's free," and they just sort of instinctually laugh. Hey, Opal, what do you do again?
Shut up.
The other weapons in the game are pretty much the same as they were in classic ROTT, and my favorite weapon from that game actually makes a return here. The 4-way Blast Zuka of Epic Win! A tear rolls down my eye at the greatness I am seeing. Outside of killing things, well, you collect keys, and really that's it. The base gameplay is shoot, shoot, and more shoot, which is exactly what I am sure many FPNs like myself were waiting for. Because sometimes you just don't feel like wading through a story, and sometimes you just don't feel like hiding behind a chest-high wall whilst your health regenerates. This game is very therapeutic. This game actually allows you to just turn off your brain and get to killing. Now, despite all of these great elements, there are actually two major flaws with the game. 1. Platforming. This is one of the most keyboard smashingly annoying aspects of the game. Really, you will hate it. You will hate all the platforming in this game. You see, in FPS's, platforming has never really worked at all, and here it works even less than usual. The problem here is you slip off the platforms all the goddamn time, and when you die, you go back. How far back? Well, that varies. You see, this game is unfortunately very poorly optimized, which is the second issue. I understand why it's not very well optimized. It's an indie game, and they have done a decent job with it. And they have fixed a number of issues inherent with this game, like the fact that when it was released, you couldn't quick save. Now, due to monetary concerns, I was actually unable to buy Rise of the Triad when it first came out. In fact, I had to wait until the Steam fall sale to actually get a copy of it. And I'm glad I had to wait. Otherwise, well, I would probably not be singing its praises right now. You have to quick save in this game, otherwise you are going to make absolutely no headway whatsoever. Why? Because you'll be dying all the goddamn time. Why is that, you may ask? Because enemies do a lot of damage and there are traps all throughout the levels that can take huge chunks off of your health. Now, in the original Rise of the Triad, you had to do the same thing. In fact, towards the end of the game, you pretty much had to save every 2 bloody feet. I cannot imagine trying to play this game without the ability to quick save. It must have been horrible, mainly because the checkpoints are very few and far between. Now, getting back to the platforming, the main problem with this is you can't save on moving platforms, and sometimes there are a lot of moving platforms. So it gets rather aggravating when one must try to complete a segment 20 bloody times. This game also marks the return of all of the classic power-ups from the classic Rise of the Triad, like God Mode and Dog Mode, and the ability to get high on shrooms. That right there should be a selling point for this game. With all that bloody gray mush like cod inundating the market, what other game lets you get high on bloody shrooms? Graphically, the game is pretty good looking. Everything is highly detailed, and the level textures do not get monotonous. However, the enemies could use a few more animations as they look fairly stiff. But there is not much to complain about, except the poor optimization causes the game to be a little bit hard to run. I am certain you have seen a bit of slowdown here and there, and I do not have a weak PC.
Your PC is slow.
It is not! A lot of people have this problem. I mean, it's perfectly normal. I mean, the CPU was tired and had a lot of processing to do that day, you know? I mean, it's not weak.
CPU must be working a lot lately for it to be happening so much, huh?
No, I mean, my computer's always strong. It can run Far Cry 3 at all high, I swear!
You know, General, maybe it's just getting old. It's getting up there in years. It's tired. It needs a rest.
Shut up! My computer is not slow. I mean, it can run like Far Cry 5! This game will chug even on strong systems, and sometimes it will crash now and again, but it should be no problem for those who are secure in their computer's ability, just like me. The game, unlike with ones today, has gibs, and has a lot of gibs, to say the least. Blood and gore on the floor, and I brought my spoon. It's time to eat up! When you shoot the enemy, they explode into fountains of blood. And if you hit them with rockets, or just shoot them enough, they will be blown into chunky salsa. Spicy, not mild. Usually these days, music is of secondary importance. Really, all that anyone cares about is the graphics. Well, here though, just listen. rocking like it's 1994 again! The level design for this game is nothing short of exquisite. You see, these days, pretty much all you get are gray corridors, or just a bloody hallway that repeat ad nauseum. Here, well, look at this! Really, just look at this. Let the awesomeness just sink in. Levels are very visually appealing, with all kinds of crap moving about in them. There are tricks and traps, and you have to be very good at timing to survive some of them. Really, this game actually keeps the player engaged, as each area is something new to feast one's eyes on. Now, as this game both strides and succeeds in being a 90s shooter, that means that story is a bit scarce and sparse and not really existent. Essentially, you're a member of the hunt team, and pretty much all you gotta do is shoot everything that moves. Really, there is no story here. There is atmosphere, and that atmosphere is one of comedy. Shooter tropes are lampshaded again and again, and there are even secret areas laden with in-jokes, and not so subtle humor as well. And lastly, multiplayer. ROTT Classic had a very robust multiplayer for the time, and was, according to this game anyway, the first FPS to include Capture the Flag, which has been an FPS staple for longer than some people have even been alive. The multiplayer here is actually quite enjoyable. It's simple, but that works in its favor. You just get into the game and shoot people. No perks, no nothing. Just you, a rocket launcher, and a hapless target. And so that is Rise of the Triad. This is basically a first-person shooter that I've been waiting for, well, years. This encompasses everything that I loved about first-person shooting. It's fun, it's fast-paced, and it's very difficult, and it's very satisfying. Sure, there's a few flaws, but I imagine that with a few patches, which I'm pretty sure will be coming, it will be pretty much the exemplary FPS that we've all really wanted. And so this is GeneralLotz wishing you good AVP Redux, again, and good knee-deep in Z-Doom, again. Whatever makes you happy.